I'm building 2 nightstands using a total of 4 8-foot long wood boards. And this part is really important because I'm going to show you how I make the wood grain continue seamlessly around the outside of the entire nightstand to make it look like it's one board that folds multiple times to create this piece. But before I make any cuts, I'm going to establish a good side and an ugly side of the board, so the good side of the board is more visible because we want to use the prettier grain of the more visible side. So to make this cool feature using my miter saw, I'm going to make a right angle by cutting 2 ends of the 2 boards I'm attaching together at 45 degrees. And because it's important I keep track of each board, I'm going to label it once I'm done cutting each piece. And now to ensure the grain continues around an outside corner, I'm going to flip the board over and cut the very edge of the piece, and that'll create a small triangular throwaway piece. And I'll continue repeating this process as I make cuts for the left side, then the top side, then the right side of the piece, so I'm using the same board for all 3 pieces. Doing this requires extra cuts and creates slightly more waste, but it's an element that really adds a nice touch in the end. I'm building these nightstands out of 2x8s, which are typically cheaper boards used as framing lumber, but because they're relatively cheap compared to any hardwood and not as nice as other options, people don't use them to create fine furniture, but they're also thicker than a typical 3/4 inch board you would find at any lumber yard. And I like being able to use boards that are 1.5 inches thick because when a piece of furniture uses thicker wood, it implies that it's nicer and more valuable, so I like using these more affordable pieces and coming up with creative ways to make a piece look really cool without having to spend too much money. So once everything is cut with my miter saw, I'm going to put that back inside and bring out my table saw, because since these boards are cheaper, the corners aren't as sharp, so I want to plane down edges by cutting off a slice just big enough to remove off the round edges. So when I connect 2 boards together, it'll be a nice smooth top. And because I'm only connecting 2 boards together, I only need to slice off one side of each piece, so once my fence is set to the correct dimension, I can run all my boards through and I'll let the front and the back of the nightstands remain with rounded edges. I could shave off the front and back sides as well to make the piece look even sharper, but because this is out of framing lumber, I'm okay with a more rough look on the corners of my piece. Once the ends are chopped up and the edges are ripped down, I'm ready to pre-drill all of my pocket holes, so that way when I put these pieces together, we won't be able to see any screws. So I locate my pocket holes on the inside of each piece wherever I won't be able to see them. And I don't need to use too many pocket holes because I'm going to reinforce every joint with wood glue. Then I'm ready to assemble everything. So the most important part of this step is clamping everything together, so that way when I screw it all together, nothing is going to move on me and I can ensure that the boards are perfectly flat when I screw it all together. So here you can see me using 2 different types of clamps. One to make sure the boards are level with each other, and the other, second longer prayer, is to ensure that the boards are clamped tightly enough to squeeze the boards to allow the glue to hold. And I want to make sure I wipe the glue off with a wet paper towel before it dries. Then I'm going to create a couple more pocket holes on the bottom side of my shelf so I can attach it to the sides of the nightstand. Then before I assemble all my pieces together, I want to spend some time sanding down areas that are going to be hard to reach when the piece is entirely assembled. But I'll spend most of my time sanding the entire piece after it's all assembled. And with the soon to be hard to reach corners sanded smoothly, I'm ready to assemble all 4 of my main pieces to create my nightstand. So first I start each piece by applying my wood glue, then I can permanently hold it together with screws. Then I use clamps in many different ways to make sure that all of my pieces are level to each other and properly attached. As joints get more complex, I use more and more clamps to make sure everything's coming together, because I also want to make sure that nothing is crooked when it's together, because once the glue dries, it's there forever. And now the most important joint is getting these 2 45s joined together properly, because it's the most visible and important part of the piece. So it's very important that this works out, so I'm going to use pretty much every clamp I own to make sure that these corners are all coming together properly, otherwise this project is a bust. I have everything assembled, but it's looking pretty rough, So to make it perfectly smooth and seamless at all the joints, I want to sand down the corners so that way the piece looks nice in the end. I always get impatient with this step, but I want to spend a lot of time sanding because I can always make or break a project, especially for this project because making sure the grain looks seamless is the main point of this piece, and that's what makes it cool. I'm not ready to put stain on it just yet because we don't know what color we want these to be, and we're not even sure how long we're keeping them because later I'm going to build something more permanent, but this helps us get some of our belongings up off the floor, but I'll link another video of how I would stain and finish a piece like this. Thanks for watching.